His newborn cried for 48 hours. Then a stranger in a torn coat walked in. Hey there, wonderful friends. I'm so excited to share today's beautiful story with you. And before we jump in, I want to take a moment to express just how much your support warms my heart. If you haven't already, I'd be thrilled if you'd hit that subscribe button. Your support not only helps our channel grow, but also fuels my passion to bring you even more uplifting stories like this one. And here's something truly special. I believe in connecting with you all, so I personally reply to every single comment on my videos. I would love to hear from you. Let me know where in the world you're tuning in from right now in the comments. I cherish every opportunity to connect with each of you. Now, let's embark on this extraordinary tale together. For 2 days and 2 nights, the newborn's cries scoured the hospital clean of rest. They threaded through white corridors and behind closed doors, rattled IV poles, needled through the antiseptic air, made the fluorescent lights feel colder. Nurses in blue scrubs moved like tides, patient, practiced, and worn. Bottles were warmed, swaddles redone, monitors checked and rechecked. The small body in the glass crib refused every comfort and punishment time could offer. His face flushed to a furious red, his eyelids squeezed shut as if against a brutal sun, his fists curled like he meant to beat the air that had failed him. At the center of that sound stood Adrien Cole. His suit, the one that looked like certainty and boardrooms, hung in creases and shadows. The knot of his tie had slipped to a defeated angle. He'd worn a path between a cheap chair and the crib, heel marks scuffed into the floor. The man who lived in steel and glass had been whittled down to fragile bone and breath. He kept the world with signatures, but here his name did nothing. His throat felt scraped raw when he spoke. Why can't anyone stop this? He could taste metal and old coffee in his mouth. Rage flared in him like fever that had nowhere to go, and he turned toward the cluster of nurses. You're supposed to be the best hospital in the city. The curly-haired nurse, a woman whose hands had steadied 100 new lives, stepped closer, stethoscope swinging like a pendulum. Mr. Cole, we've done everything. His vitals are fine. He's feeding, breathing, but she swallowed, words snagging on a grief that was not her own. He's grieving. He stared as if the word had no right to exist in a room like this. He's a baby. He doesn't even understand what that means. His voice came out hard, and then softer, fraying toward the end. He hated what he heard in it, pleading. 2 days earlier, Amelia had gone quiet. The world had been loud with hope and panic. Then she had simply slipped away, like a tide that forgot to return. No last look that he could hold. No alchemy for turning money into breath. She had been the only softness allowed in his life of edges. Her laugh had peeled back his armor without effort. Now his son's cries sounded like a demand he could not answer. Bring her back. Another nurse, younger, glanced at the baby and then at him, and said so quietly it almost didn't count as speech. Babies know, sir. They feel what's missing. Adrian's hands turned into rocks. He wanted some order. He wanted a machine with a switch. He wanted to scream until the building cracked. He also wanted to disappear from the noise that sounded too much like his own chest trying to split open. He looked at the crib, at the flailing, threadbare limbs. He thought he would barter anything. Every tower puncturing a skyline with his name. Every contract that had made him someone people bowed to. If the universe would trade, he would bankrupt himself to purchase silence, to purchase a mother. The hall thickened with people pretending to look elsewhere. In that dense, helpless quiet, he heard himself say, "He'll cry himself to death." The curly-haired nurse crouched beside him. In her face, he saw tiredness and an unafraid kind of compassion that startled him. "No, sir, he'll survive, but he won't stop. Not unless he feels what he's lost. Not unless someone," her voice thinned, failed, and then found its final edge. "Someone gives back what was taken." He looked at her as if she were undoing him with a sentence. "Don't you dare say that," he managed, and it was like his teeth had to hold back sobbing. The monitor beeped in a maddeningly reasonable rhythm. The baby's crying rose, sharp enough to carve bone. Adrien pressed his palms to his ears until both drums hurt, but the sound lived under his skin and refused exile. Footsteps intruded. Slow, uneven, a drag and a lift that scratched along the linoleum. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. At the far end of the hall stood a young black woman, small in a ragged, torn brown coat that had given up keeping any warmth. A faded green shirt showed at the collar. Dirt streaked her cheek in a thumbprint of the city, and exhaustion sat beneath her eyes like two dark coins. She did not look at the doctors or the man in the expensive suit. She looked at the baby and stood very still, as if stillness might coax the right thing into the world. The curly-haired nurse's spine went rigid. Someone hissed, half whisper, half accusation. Her? What is she doing here? Another voice layered on it, brittle as glass. Is she homeless? Who let her in? Security. Adrien was on his feet before he knew it. The outrage lifted him, a hollow thing filled with ache. His mouth did what it always did, issued a command. Get her out! The woman's gaze did not leave the gate. Baby. Her voice entered the corridor like a thread pulled through cloth. Frayed, careful, unignorable. He's not crying because he's sick. He's crying because she's not here. It felt to Adrien like someone had struck him in the sternum with an open hand. He lost a breath. The woman took a step closer. The torn edge of her coat brushed her knees. One of her hands shook. The other hovered as if she were offering calm to a startled animal. I know that sound. 6 months ago, I heard it every night. My little boy cried the same way. He wasn't hungry. He wasn't sick. He just wanted me close. And when he was gone, she swallowed the rest, the words catching before she could force them out. That silence was worse than the screaming. Adrien's jaw loosened. The floor seemed to tilt a fraction under his shoes. You lost a baby. Her eyes shone wetly and then spilled. The tears cut paths through the dirt until they looked like a map of something she'd walked through and could not leave. 6 months ago, pneumonia. I had nothing, no money, no help. I held him until he couldn't breathe anymore. And now, every time I hear a cry like that, it rips me open again. The nurses looked as if they had been made of stone and were remembering how to move. The younger one pressed a hand to her mouth as if to hold back her own noise. The woman's attention slid back to the child in the crib like a hand closing. Let me hold him just for a moment. Please, I can help. Fear pinned Adrien for a beat. Fear of trusting, of being seen in his ruin, of surrendering anything when he had just lost everything. But the baby's cry kept slicing him thin. He nodded. The world shrank to the nurse stepping back, and the woman reaching in with reverence, as if the glass were a reliquary. She gathered the tiny, angry body and lifted him to the faded green fabric of her chest. The smells around them shifted. Bleach retreated, coffee went cold, and something human and immediate took the air. Rain-damp wool, city dust, skin. She held him the way someone holds something they have both lost and not lost, arms making a language older than words. His scream snagged, faltered, broke into hiccups that hurt to hear for a different reason. He pressed his cheek into her collarbone as if he had found a light and wanted to sleep against it. She cried silently while the baby softened against her. Her hand, rough with winter and sidewalks, rubbed slow circles on the small back. Shh! It was not an order, it was a prayer, and it found an answer in the boy's body. It's all right, little one. I know what it's like to miss her. I know what it's like to want her back. Adrien felt the floor again, but now, as if it were the deck of a ship after a storm. He put his hand against the wall to know it was there. His throat ached with something old and immediate. Around him, the hospital resumed its own measured breathing, but he stood outside of it, not a man in a corridor, but a father watching an impossible transaction. The alms of one grief paying down the debt of another. After a long moment, the woman turned. The baby held a little closer, as if to carry his calm from one harbor to the next. She stepped toward Adrien and offered back what he had been afraid to hold a moment before. He took his son with trembling hands. The child fussed, then settled, hiccups finally drawing themselves out into sighs. He felt the small heart beating against his ribs, and for the first time since Amelia's last breath, something inside him unclenched. The woman's voice came to him gently, worn but certain. He doesn't need a miracle, she said, as if she were teaching him how to stand in a place where miracles don't come. He just needs to feel he's not alone. Hold him so he knows you're here. He did. He tucked the boy against the empty spot in his chest and made the shape of presence with his arms. Tears finally found their path, soaking his son's dark hair until it lay flat, plastered by salt and sorrow. He looked at the woman and saw not intrusion, not audacity, but an absence so luminous it cast light. You lost him only 6 months ago. His voice sounded like a man speaking from the bottom of a well. She nodded. It trembled in her jaw and then steadied. He understood that she could not stay where she was for long. He could see the edges of the world closing back in around her. He thought of all the times he had glanced past someone like her on a sidewalk, as if pain had a dress code. The apology rose in him like something his body had been waiting to pour. "I'm sorry for your loss." Her eyes widened as if the words had opened a window in a room no one had entered for months. Not pity, not blame, just a truth set down between them like water. In the sterile brightness, something softened that had not softened in 2 days. There were still beeps and footsteps and the soft commands of nurses. There was still the gravity of a missing mother pulling at every face in the room. But Adrien stood with his son and felt the boy's breath match his. The woman, empty-handed again, looked at them for one last slow second, and in that look a small, fierce relief that she had eased a cry she could no longer quiet in her own arms. Two people from distant worlds stood stitched together by loss, and in the blue-lit corridor, the sound that had driven everything quieted to a human, bearable sound, a child's breath riding the rise and fall of his father's chest.